Hello and welcome to another lecture here. We actually only have 2 of these left, so you're making great progress. In this lecture, we're going to be learning about JSON and how we can process that data. And you might be saying, JSON? What the heck is JSON? Well, here's W3 Schools. This is a great website if you want to learn anything web. They have awesome stuff, I think, on HTML and CSS. That's what I've used them most for, but they've also got it on other things. And so, for example, JSON here, it technically stands for JavaScript Object Notation, but don't let the JavaScript part throw you off there. It's used with almost any programming language out there, and it's basically a way for computers and code to be able to talk to one another in sort of a unified standard way. In our last app where we did Guess the Celebrity, it was a little bit of an issue that when we were downloading the HTML, we had to, sift through and get the celebrity names and the image URLs, and that if they decided to change how they processed or, put out their HTML code, it would break our app. And, like basing our app on their website, bad idea. But there's a lot of companies out there that will put out something called an API, which allows people to consume JSON from them, and it's in a standard format. And sort of those companies spit, shake, and promise that, hey, we're not going to change how this API delivers data. It's always going to come through in JSON like this. And if we ever do have a new version, that there'll be a separate URL to say, okay, here's version 2 of our API. That's typically what we see people do. So yeah, JSON is the way that data is formatted, and an API is usually where you can get that information. So for example, here's what JSON could look like. You've got like these curly brackets here, and it's sort of a key value store, almost like you'd see in a dictionary where you say, hey, what's someone's name? It's John. What's their age? 31. What city are they in? New York, type of thing. And you can also have JSON where you've got arrays in there. Let's see if there's anything on this list. It looks like maybe we'd have to go to JSON arrays to see that. So you can see all sorts of different data types that you can be passing through here. But so for the example that we're going to be using here is we're going to go get the weather. This is an awesome example of why you'd use an API, because if you don't have an API, if you want an app to tell the weather, you've got to get weather information somehow, right? So you could go try and collect all that data yourself, or there's tons of great companies here that say, hey, we've collected all the weather information. We've made it easy for you to access it, and you can just display it there. So if we go ahead and go to, this is openweathermap.org, and if we go to their API, we can go check out their documentation. They have a list here of how you can go ahead and use their information. So for example, if we want to know what the weather's like in London, UK, if we go ahead and click on this, they give us this nice sample URL here, and it will tell us, oh, hey, this is in the JSON format, right? So it kind of just looks like a bunch of gibberish here, but if this is kind of a cool thing, if you do just search pretty JSON, like this, there's all sorts of different JSON formatters and stuff, but just go ahead and pick one of these. If we select all this text and copy it, and then paste it over here and say process, it sort of puts it in this nice, easy, consumable format. So it's showing you, okay, there's a top level sort of dictionary here, and we can get like the coordinates for London now. We can get the weather, where it's going to show that it's currently, a drizzle, light intensity drizzle. Also inside of here, we can get like the current temperature and things like that, the visibility, the wind, like all sorts of different pieces of information here that you can grab. So sometimes it's a little bit easier to see things in this situation. So my challenge to you is I want you to set up a new Android project where you can download this data. So this isn't HTML, this is JSON, but you're still going to follow the same format of creating and extending your own async task, right, and going and getting that information. So I want you to get as far as downloading the information from this URL, and then we'll move forward with changing that and customizing it to our app. Okay, go ahead and hit pause now. All right, so hopefully that went well for you. I want you to open up Android Studio so that you can start a new project. So we'll go ahead and give that a second to open there. Like I said, big thing here is we're trying to just download the data. So I'm going to go ahead and call this JSON demo, and we'll just go ahead and do defaults for all this great stuff. Okay, Android Studio will get out and do its thing. And just want to take a moment to say there's APIs for almost all the big websites out there. Google Maps has an API, Facebook has an API, Twitter has an API. I mean, you name it, there's probably an API out there. I personally have an app that sends out text messages, and there's this awesome service, Twilio, that allows you to work with their API to send text messages to people programmatically. That's pretty cool. I mean, there's just all sorts of things. And once you sort of get in this world of working with APIs, you're going to be amazed at how many different ways you can work with it. Okay, so now that we're here and we have some code, let's go ahead and start our new class. So we're going to say public class download task, and we're going to say that this extends the async. Let's see, give our autocomplete a second here. There we go, async task. And in this situation, again, just want to use string, comma, void, comma, string, because in the end we want to spit back some JSON, a JSON string there. So let's go ahead and implement those methods. Say okay to that, and I'll give us some room here on the left side. All right, so now that we're here in this do in background, we want to change this to URLs. That's kind of our classic thing, right? And we just want to go through our regular flow here. So if you'd like to, feel free to go ahead and copy and paste this from another lecture if you don't want to type this all out again, but maybe you'll enjoy sort of getting another shot at practicing this. But got to have a place for our result, something for our URL. Also, here we've got to go ahead and, oops. Let's see here, there we go, get the import there. Then we need an HTTP URL connection that we are going to call URL connection. Excellent. All right, so once we got those pieces in place, and I guess initially we'll set this equal to null. Once we have those pieces in place, it's time to surround our next bit of code in a try catch. So we'll say that we want to be looking out for our exception E. We'll do our E.print stack trace. Also with this, we want to go ahead and return nil or null if there's some sort of issue with our code. All right, so now that we're here, we're going to create a new URL object, and we're going to create this from the URL's first object. Next thing that we want to do is set up our URL connection to be a URL.open connection. We've got to go ahead and cast that. So HTTP URL connection. After we've done that, we'll go ahead and create an input stream. We'll call in, and we'll say this is URL connection dot get input stream. Excellent. And once we have that in place, we're going to make an input stream reader that we'll just call reader. We'll say this is a new input stream reader. Guess I got to do the capital I to get that autocomplete, in which we'll pass in. After we've got this in place, we'll go ahead and do our int, got to do lowercase there, int data. That this is where we'll say reader.read. And once we've done that, we'll go ahead and do a little while loop here, and we'll say while data is not equal to -1. Go ahead, loop through, and do your thing. Okay, so with this, we need to make a char that we're going to call current. Set this equal to the data, whatever it currently happens to be. Then we'll say result plus equals our current character, just like that. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to say, okay, data is equal to reader.read, and that'll move us on to our next bit. And we also need to make sure we return the particular string that we have here. So we are going to return the result, just like this. Okay, so with this in place, there's one sort of extra special thing that I want to do here, and that's there's another method that we can provide here. So what we're going to do is So while we're still inside of this class, right now we have this do in background, I'm going to provide an extra method and just talk about what we can do here. So this is going to be called on post execute. So do lowercase on post, and you can see there's the on post execute. If we just hit enter, it's going to go autocomplete all of that for us. And this is basically our chance to write some code when this has finished running. And so basically the do in background code, this should never touch anything from the UI perspective. This is all supposed to happen on the background. While on post execute, this is where you could go touch something in the user interface. So we're not going to do that right now, but essentially this string that comes through here, this is whatever the result was above. So for the time being, we're just going to go ahead and log this information. So we'll say log I, and we'll just say this is our JSON, and we'll go ahead and provide whatever the string is, because that should be the JSON data that we're getting back. Okay, so kind of a cool little variant thing that I wanted to show you there. With this information, and I'm going to go ahead and get our emulator up and running, because we know sometimes how long it takes to get that going there. We're going to go to our onCreate method, and inside of here we're going to first create a new download task, and that's not coming up. I must have given it a different name there. Download task. Download task. There we go. So let's try that again. Download task. That's what I'm looking for. We'll just go ahead and call this task and say this is equal to a new download task. Okay. Then with this task, we want to say task.execute. Right, and this is where we'd want to provide it some string of a URL that we want it to go and grab. So in this case, let's go back to here, and where we have this URL that gets us this information, we just want to go ahead and copy this directly. We'll go back to Android Studio and put that inside of the curly brackets. So this goes and gets the weather for London in the UK. We've also got this app ID in here that I think allows us to access this information, because on this Open Weather app, to use all of their APIs, they recommend that you get an API key. It is free, but they just want to be able to monitor to see how much they're using their API. But typically when you're just doing a small amount of requests, you're not going to get any issues from them with having things flare up. So with this, this should go execute, and when we get to this part, it should log the JSON that we have. So let's go ahead and open up logcat, and we will restart our app, and here we go. Okay, oh, and I just forgot one crucial thing. We got to make sure that we go ahead and ask for internet permission here. So we'll go ahead and make some space, say use permission, we want the internet, and we'll go ahead and close that up. All right, so with that in place, let's go ahead and run our app. Okay, and here it comes. We'll give it a second here to load up inside of the emulator. There we go, it finally finished up there. And app opens up, and look at that. Here comes our JSON. There it's showing the coordinates, the weather, all that good information. We don't need all this information. Oh, even look at that. It's got like the sunset and the sunrise. Pretty cool, detailed information. But we kind of got to take this information and then allow the user to get to it. And in order to do that, we have to process this information. And the way that we're going to do this is we're actually going to use something called a JSON object, and it's going to be a really cool way to move through this data. So inside of this on post execute, this is where we're going to write the good chunk of our code here. And the big thing that we want to do is we want to take this string and we want to convert it to an actual JSON object. So because we know this is coming through as JSON rather than a bunch of HTML, we can actually turn it into this JSON object and work with the data a little bit more elegantly. We don't have to, do a split and regex to find all these things. With JSON, it's much, much simpler to work with. So the first thing that we want to do is create something called a JSON object. and make sure you hit enter on that so you get the import. And we'll call our new variable here just JSON object, and we're going to set this equal to a new JSON object. And this is, we need to fill it with a string here. That's one of the options that it could be. And so we're going to fill it with S, which is the string that's going to be the result. So we'll go ahead and put S inside of there. If you're confused at all about why we should do S, you could rename this to result if you'd like to, but I think it's fine as just S. This does have to be surrounded in a try catch, so let's go ahead and do our fun little curly bracket there, catch, and with our catch we're looking for exception E, in which case we would do e.print stack trace. Oh, and exception, I forgot to hit enter on that. And I also misspelled it, exception. Oh, that's all I needed to do. Now I can print that. All right, so now we've got this JSON object. We can use it to sort of dive in to this code a little bit. So if we go ahead and look at this JSON formatter, the main thing that we want to move into is the weather. So the weather contains all this cool stuff like, oh, there's a drizzle, and well, it looks like that's the only thing right now. You may be seeing different when you're running this, but this will actually give us an array of some weather information. So what we need to do is go back to our app here, and we need to make a new string. So I'm going to say string weather info, and we're going to set this equal to our JSON object dot get string. And inside of here, we want to pass the key of getting into that piece of data. So to get to this weather information, we have to provide weather right here. So we're going to go back to our code. I'm going to type in lowercase weather. You got to make sure you spell it exactly the same, capitalization, everything. But if we do this, it should give us whatever the weather content is. So we can go ahead and do a log here. We'll say log.i, and we'll say something like weather content, and we'll say that this is going to be equal to weather info, or print that out. So with that in place, let's just go ahead and run this, see what that looks like, and this will tell us the next steps that we need to do in order to pull out some more information from this weather API. So we've got our app here. It looks like it opened up, and look at that, there's our weather content. Now it gave us back an array, and in this array, it only has one object in it, this thing with the curly brackets. But inside of here, this is where the main and the description is. And it's an array because sometimes there's going to be multiple things going on. Maybe there's a drizzle, maybe there's like some thunderstorm coming out, maybe it's getting sunny again, but there could be multiple objects coming back here. So we need to handle this as an array. And in order to do that, we're going to create something called a JSON array. So with this JSON array, we'll just call it R for short, right? Just a little array. We're going to say this is equal to a new JSON array, and it needs to get some sort of string or other JSON object. So we'll go ahead and pass weather info in there. Okay. Now once we've done that, because this is an array, we can go ahead and loop through it. So we're going to do a for loop, and inside this for loop, we'll say, okay, for int I is equal to 0, and while I is less than whatever the array's length is, we'll do array.length just like that. It means we want to keep moving forward, and then we'll just say I++. So this will successfully loop through everything here. Then down below, it's going to be our job to get the JSON object at this particular array location. So we're going to call this a JSON object that we'll just call JSON part, because it's just part of the array, not the whole thing. And we'll do array.get JSON object, and now we have to pass it an index, and so what we're going to give it is I, right? Because we're going to start, if you get this, the 0 position, the 1, the 2, the 3, right? It looks like right now, as of doing this, there's maybe only 1, and I guess that's just what the weather is in the UK. You could be running this and there'll be 3 or 4 things, but you know, it's going to change. And that's what's so cool about APIs, is it's live data. So then with this, we want to go ahead and just log this out, make sure that this is working. So the first thing is we want to show the information for, and if we go back to logcat, you'll see this. We want to know what main is, and we want to know what description. So we can say like there's a drizzle. What does drizzle mean? Light intensity drizzle. I know that's kind of a lame description there, but that's what we're going for. So the first one is we're going to call this main. And as far as the string that we're going to attach there, we have to get to our JSON part, right, which we had just pulled out of here, out of the array. And we're going to say JSON part.get string, and we have to provide what we're looking for. So if we say main here, it's going to get us drizzle. If we say description, it's going to give us light intensity drizzle. So for this first one, I'll just provide main, and we're going to do a very similar thing here for our next one, and this is going to be description. And you know, it might even just be best to copy and paste directly from there, because let me tell you, these JSON APIs, they are unforgiving. If you don't have the information exactly right, things are not going to work. And but the nice thing is you can rely on JSON APIs to always be the same in the same format, and as long as you prepare for that, you're going to be okay. So we'll go ahead and have this emulator here ready to go. And look at that, it popped up. So if we go down to logcat, look at that. It shows drizzle and light intensity drizzle. So again, hopefully if you're running this, you can see more than one. I think it just so happened when I was running this that we only have one thing coming through there. But this is a nice introduction how to work with APIs in JSON. Hopefully you saw how this was a lot cleaner than going through with, you know, doing some regex, or we had to split a string into multiple pieces, right? Like this just works that much better. Also, that APIs are great. Like we can go to the website here for open weather, and it's going to tell us exactly how this thing is going to look. Like if we go back here, it has a full breakdown of what this should be, as opposed to, remember with the top 100 celebrities, they could change their website at any moment and all of a sudden our app just explodes. Where here, you know, there's kind of a standard. They're saying, yeah, this is how we're going to give you back information. And if this was ever to change, I want you to notice this, /data/2.5. So they have earlier versions of their API. I assume there's like a 2.4, 2.3. There might have been a 1 point something, but the idea is that you can bank on these APIs and say, you know what, they're given, as long as I follow 2.5 and I ask for 2.5, I'm going to get that back. Okay. So hopefully you enjoyed learning about JSON. We just have one more big lecture here to finish off this section. And I know this has been a really big one, so congrats on you for getting this far. But let's go ahead and dive into that next one now.